Okay, let's dive into one of the most famous promises in the entire Bible. I'm willing to bet you've heard it 1,000 times, but its real power, its true strength, is so often missed. In this explainer, we are going to peel back the layers of this single sentence to find its actual, unshakable meaning, and we're going to do it by simply putting it back where it belongs.
And here it is, Romans 8:28. You've definitely seen it on a coffee mug or maybe a bumper sticker. It's a go-to verse for comfort, for hope. But the problem is, when we lift it out of its original setting, we kind of dilute its incredible power. We turn a steak into broth.
So that's what we've got to ask, right? What is this good that's being promised? What exactly are the all things that are working together? And maybe the biggest question of all, is this some kind of blanket promise for absolutely everybody? Well, let's find out.
So first things first, we have to admit just how popular and honestly how misunderstood this promise can be. To get to the real heart of it, we just can't look at the verse all by itself.
You know, a good way to think about Romans chapter 8 is like it's a grand symphony. And verse 28, that's not a standalone solo. Oh no, it's the powerful, thundering crescendo that the entire piece has been building towards. To really get it, you have to hear the whole song. So how do we do that? Well, the best way is to look at the structure of the chapter itself. The Apostle Paul builds his case like a master lawyer in this brilliant, logical progression that we can basically break down into a four-part journey. See, he starts by laying the foundation, what it means to live by the Spirit. Then he contrasts our suffering right now with the incredible glory that's coming. And it's only then, in that third part, right in the middle of talking about our weakness, that he drops verse 28. Then he finishes with this triumphant declaration of our security in God's love. You see how it all builds on itself? Now, this is what's so important, the timing of it all. Paul doesn't give us this promise after talking about winning and success. Not at all. It comes right after he says that all of creation is groaning in pain, that we ourselves groan inwardly, and that sometimes we're so weak we don't even know what we should be praying for. This promise isn't for the mountaintop. It's a direct response to our struggle in the valley.
You see where this is going, right? This context immediately forces us to ask a really critical question. If this promise is given, right in the middle of talking about hardship, who is it for? Is it a universal guarantee for every single person? Paul is very, very specific here. And this is a huge point. The promise is conditional. It's not for everyone on the planet. Paul describes this specific group in two ways. First, by their response to God. They are them that love God. And second, by God's action toward them. They are the called according to his purpose. It's like a two-sided coin, a divine initiative and a human response, all wrapped up in a relationship. All right, so we've got the who. We know who this promise is for. Now let's get into the promise itself and break down those two massive phrases, good and all things. I mean, what does Paul even mean by all things? When he says all things, he really means all things. And given the context we just talked about, this explicitly includes the hard stuff, the bad stuff, the suffering, the trials, the weaknesses, the persecution. And here's the brilliant part. The verse isn't saying that cancer or tragedy are good. No way. It's saying that God is so powerful and so sovereign that he can take every single one of those things, even the absolute worst, and weave them together for a good purpose. And that leads us to the most important question of all. If God is working all these things for good, what is that good? I think for most of us, our default setting is to think of things like, better health, a new job, an easier life. But that's not what Paul's talking about, not even close. Here's a key tip. Always let the Bible define its own terms. And thankfully, Paul doesn't leave us guessing. The very next verse, verse 29, tells us exactly what the good is. It is to be conformed to the image of his Son. God's ultimate goal for those who love him isn't to make their circumstances more comfortable, it's to make their character more like Jesus Christ. That is the ultimate good. And how can we be sure this will actually happen? Well, Paul immediately lays out what's often called the golden chain of salvation. It's an unbreakable 5-link chain of God's work. Those he foreknew, he also predestined to be like Jesus. Those he predestined, he also called. Those he called, he also justified. And look at this. Those he justified, he also glorified. It's past tense. It's a done deal from start to glorious finish. So that chain is the bedrock. It's the foundation for the final triumphant crescendo of Romans 8. Paul doesn't just give us a promise and say, trust me. He provides the absolute, unbreakable guarantee that backs it all up.
After laying out this incredible, mind-bending plan, Paul just throws out a series of questions that he already knows the answer to. He starts with this one. I mean, think about it. If God himself is for us, if he's orchestrating everything for our ultimate good, what person, what power, what anything in the entire universe could possibly stand against us and win? And then he delivers the knockout blow. He builds this incredible list, this poetic masterpiece, naming every cosmic power, every dimension of time and space, every fear we could possibly imagine. And he declares that not a single one of them has the power to separate believers from the love of God that makes this entire promise possible. Okay, let's catch our breath and bring all this together. When we put verse 28 back where it belongs, nestled inside the grand story of Romans 8, it becomes something so much richer, so much more solid than just a hopeful little saying.
So let's just break it down one last time. The truth that God orchestrates everything, it's given in the context of a world full of suffering and our own weakness. It's a promise for believers only, those who love God and are called by him. The ultimate good isn't our comfort, it's our conformity to Christ. And the whole thing is guaranteed by a love so strong that absolutely nothing can get in its way.
You know, maybe the most beautiful way to see this is that the entire chapter is framed by two gigantic, unshakable truths. It begins in verse 1 with no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, and it ends in verse 39 with no separation from the love of Christ.
In our verse, Romans 8:28, is the rock-solid promise for everything that happens in between those 2 points. Every tear, every trial, every frustration, every moment of weakness that we experience between our salvation and our final glory, it's all being sovereignly, lovingly, and purposefully woven together for our ultimate Christ-like good.
So seeing it like that, not as a shallow promise for an easy life, but as a deep guarantee of transformation through a hard life, all secured by an unbreakable love, how does that change what this promise really means to you? That's definitely something worth thinking about.